The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is rolling along here again on a Tuesday night. If you're catching us via the podcast, remember, you can be a part of the conversation in the stream, in the chat room. You can be in the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. All you got to do is catch us wherever you are. Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn. We're everywhere here. So make it part of your plan to join us for the live broadcast of the Red, Gold, and Bold. Jeffri Chadiha, Sam McDowell, Soren Petro with you. We're going over the 5 most instrumental players, not named the obvious ones: Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, none of the Hall of Fame types. Who are the 5 players that can be instrumental in which way this season goes? We're breaking it down 1 to 5 right now here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
You are listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeffri Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro. Jeffri Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Sam McDowell is the sports columnist for the Kansas City Star. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the Best Chiefs podcast, Jeffri Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. We're getting after it here on a Tuesday night as we record the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. 5 most instrumental players. We took out the big boys, Mahomes, Kelce, and Chris Jones. Always like to kind of check what we learned from this. Sam, I'll give you the first one. What did you learn? This was kind of your baby on where we went with this one. What did you learn from putting the exercise together? Sam?
Turn the microphone on.
Chiefs play. Just Chiefs players, right? Because otherwise, I think we could potentially have some quarterbacks or some other teams. But
no, these are just Chiefs. It's the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
Yeah, these are just Chiefs.
I know our last podcast we ranked all of the coaches, but yes, just the Chiefs.
Well, my point is, Josh Allen might have an influence on the Chiefs season, but yeah, I mean, I think some of the guys that I think are most instrumental, and the way you phrase it, Soren, was exactly how I did it, which is when I say instrumental, I mean has the potential biggest effect on which way the season goes. Doesn't necessarily mean that these are going to be the 5 guys that are going to have great seasons. Right. But a couple of the guys on my list are question marks. So I think that part would be interesting.
Yeah, I did too. Anything come away, you come away with, Jeff, from doing the exercise?
I think for a team that is trying to three-peat and has been the dominant team in the NFL for the last 6 years, that there are more question marks than I think, we talk about. I mean, I think we probably talk about these in different, conversations. We've done this over the course of most of this offseason, but I think that there were some people on this list that I sat there and thought, man, I really don't know what this guy's going to be in this situation. So that was my biggest takeaway. Yeah.
I'll tell you one of the things you're going to notice a trend of mine. I think it's tough to be instrumental. Like Joe Thuney's going to be, like, you could take it and say he's going to be instrumental because he's going to play well. His left tackle on that side is a question mark, right? I think that's probably going to come up at least for somebody in here on that one. But so he could be instrumental. Like if he goes down, that really makes it even tougher out there on the left tackle. But you know what you're getting out of Joe Thuney. For me, where I kept coming back to was guys that are unknowns. I think you've almost got to be a first or second year player, not necessarily in the NFL, but first or second year with this team, which also does bring up the younger players. I think that's where it rides for me, on where at least that's what I ended up coming around to a lot of the times was it ended up being younger players for me. So that's what I found. So Sam, go ahead, Sam.
Well, I was just going to say, I thought you were going to go a little bit different way on that point whenever you mentioned Joe Thuney, which is we took the 3 premium players out of this I still find myself going back to the premium positions, though.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's fine. I got no problem with it. All right. Why don't you lead us off, Sam?
I've got Hollywood Brown number 1,
Okay.
just because I think he is the player who could most, and you might even be able to. Jeff just hated the Hollywood Brown answer.
We lost Jeff.
Hated the Hollywood Brown. He just said,
Get him out.
I'm out on Hollywood Brown.
Yeah, I love it. All right.
It's too bad because he's just going to miss a really, really good point. I think Hollywood Brown has the chance to have the biggest effect on the Chiefs' offense looking different than it did a year ago. Soren, you and I have talked about this a lot, even on the radio show as well, is the fact that the Chiefs were terrible at throwing the deep ball a year ago. Patrick Mahomes was the worst rated quarterback in the NFL among qualifying quarterbacks throwing the passes that traveled at least 20 yards downfield. Hollywood Brown's the guy who could change that. And I emphasis on could, because we don't know how teams are going to defend them. We don't know if the Chiefs offense and Matt Nagy and Andy Reid are going to figure out ways to beat the cover 2. Jeff, you just hated Hollywood Brown, huh?
Yeah. Holy cow,
Yeah.
Settle down.
Get off this conversation right now.
Well, I told Stren you were missing a really good point, which is that I just think Hollywood Brown has the chance to make the Chiefs offense look different than last year more than any other player on the roster. And to be honest, that might include Patrick Mahomes since he was here. I think the coaches could have that kind of influence, but I just think he's exactly what they didn't have a year ago.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I'll say that Hollywood Brown is number 2 on my list, and I think he is the best bet to be an impact guy in the receiving corps. We know Rashee Rice is a question mark till that gets settled. And I think, we're going to see him with a true passing quarterback and a true passing coach. And so whatever you thought he could be coming out of Oklahoma comes back on the table, and there could be a lot of ceiling here. I think that's what's different between him and Juju Smith-Schuster. We saw Juju play with a Hall of Fame quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger. So we kind of knew what the best of Juju would be. And after the injuries, it'd probably be lower than that, right? We don't know what Hollywood Brown can be. He's often nicked up. I will say that. So maybe he's lost a little bit from some of his injuries, or maybe he's just been disenchanted with what's been going on. But I think there's ceiling there. And I've got him on my list as well, but I've got him at number 2. Does he crack your list, Jeff?
He's at 2 with my list as well. Okay. And for a lot of the same reasons. I mean, the only thing about him that I worry about, and I get the knock about him playing with Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray and whoever else was quarterback in the Cardinals when he was there, but he's had 5 years to make an impact. He's only had one really impactful year. And for a guy who was a first-round pick who is, as talented as he is, you got to remember when he was in Baltimore, he faced a lot of man coverage. There were a lot of people in the box trying to stop Lamar Jackson in that run game. So he had a lot of opportunities to put up big numbers. He was never a big average per catch guy. And so I don't know what you're going to get there. I don't know if he's going to stay healthy. And I don't know how quickly he will assimilate to this offense. I mean, you're talking about, I hate to put the Kadarius Toney on him, but there are a lot of high hopes for Kadarius Toney, a lot of high hopes for Sky Moore, a lot of high hopes for a lot of guys who've come into this offense and really haven't done a great job in the first year. Juju was the outlier, to be honest with you, so I'm kind of a little more skeptical about him. The first guy on my list, though, just to start off as I got bumped off, was Kingsley Suamataia. I mean, he's the one that has a really critical job in this offense, and I know that you have Mahomes and the other guys on the offensive line. That's a big advantage. But if he's not a really good player, I think we're going to realize how much we took for granted what Orlando Brown Jr. and what Donovan Smith gave this offense the last couple of years. I mean, it could be disastrous if he's not ready to go. And I can't think of how many guys who were rookies in that position who weren't top picks who came in and just lit the world on fire in year 1.
Yeah, I think it's a great. Yeah. Go ahead, Sam.
Well, Stern, I know you haven't given number 1 yet, but I'll just add on to Kingsley because he was number 2 on my list. Patrick Mahomes has won 3 of the past 5 Super Bowls. The 2 he didn't win. I'd still argue that the Bengals game is the worst we've seen him play in the second half. That one's on him. The other one's on the offensive line. And the other reason Kingsley is instrumental to 2024 is because he shapes the next 3 years too.
Yes.
Like what he is now is going to shape what you have to do elsewhere. And by the way, what's the plan B if Kingsley Suamataia is not at least an average NFL player? Like, I don't think any of us thought after the brief look at Wanya Morris, like he should be on an NFL roster, absolutely. But I don't think any of us think he should be the starting left tackle for a Super Bowl champion. And, it was a few weeks ago on the show I mentioned that there's only been, 2 left tackles that have been on rookie left tackles for Super Bowl champions. Like, this is a rare thing that the Chiefs are going in with. And look, I mean, we all said we're not predicting that these guys are going to be good, but there's absolutely an argument that to Jeff putting him number 1.
Yeah, and Hollywood Brown was number 2 on my list, and Kingsley Suamataia was number 1 because Hollywood Brown, I think you're at least going to get something. We have no idea what you're going to get from Suamataia, and we've seen guys bust out as first-round picks as tackles, let alone second-round picks, and the Chiefs are asking him to play left tackle, and they're getting all the speed that they want to throw down, which is throw down the field, which somebody mentioned in the chat.
And look at who he's facing. We're talking about Max Crosby, Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett. I mean, all these guys. I mean, they line up left and right, but all these guys are going to be across from him at some point. Danielle Hunter, Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa. I mean, there's a lot of guys out there in the schedule who could cause him problems.
Yeah, and I was going the same place Sam was with, like, if he doesn't do it, we're getting into a point here where if Suamataia does not nail down this spot, this is starting to look like the defensive tackle parade that the Kansas City Chiefs were running through during the Dick Vermeil era, which had them just constantly drafting defensive linemen, Ryan Sims, Eddie Freeman, Junior Seavey. They just constantly kept looking, trying to find those defensive linemen, even continued as you got to Scott Pioli, as he went with can't even remember his name. I put his name out of my mind, the number 3 overall pick out of LSU.
Dorsey.
No, not Dorsey.
Tyson Jackson.
Jackson.
Yeah.
Dorsey was in the parade before.
Yeah.
Right. And then Tyson Jackson. They went D-line. And when you're doing that all the time and using premium picks on them, certainly top 5, top 10 picks like the Chiefs were early on, you're not addressing other things. Right. And that's what's scary is Wanya Morris was a 3rd-round pick and now Kingsley's a 2nd-round pick. Those are 2 premium picks. And it's one of the reasons why, whether it was Donovan Smith or some other veteran, like, you got to hit on this. Otherwise, those are good picks to draft wide receivers, to draft cornerbacks, to draft great guards, great centers, Creed Humphrey coming the 2nd round, really good linebackers. Like, this roster's been stocked with 2nd and 3rd round picks that have been good selections at other spots. So this needs to hit. Otherwise, the mock drafts for next year already are putting left tackle next to the Chiefs, right? And they're just doing it because it's their biggest need now. That can all end if this kid plays. And so that was one of the reasons why I thought it was big. It's huge for this year because to be all they want to be offensively, they need him to play. I think it's even bigger for the future and for them to being able to sustain it. So I wanted it number 1 on my list because I think it's twofold. I do think it's the biggest thing for 2024, but I think it's even bigger beyond.
It's a team that plans ahead. I mean, I think that's why the Chiefs' reign has lasted beyond just a blip. It's because they're constantly are looking for the replacement before they need the replacement. And so that's why, 2024 and November and December, the Chiefs are going to be analyzing, do we need a left tackle next year? And so we said most instrumental player for 2024. That's why it's still applicable to account for the future, is because the Chiefs will be accounting for the future in 2024 if they have to at that position.
When it comes to the future of your business, you want to leave a good first impression, last impression with customers, with clients. That comes with a parking lot that doesn't have people playing bumper cars in it. That's what Gann Asphalt and Concrete does. They've been solving parking lot problems for 30 years in Kansas City with free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. That's right. They're not picking up guys on the way to the job, teaching them how to do it. They're getting real in-house members, people that know what they're doing, working on every single job and every project. Everyone comes with a written warranty. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business focus on the business. No unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. One contractor, all things parking lot. That's Gann Asphalt and Concrete. 816-484-3338. So we're to number 3. So we have in different orders. We all three have the same top 2 guys. Jeff, you want to do the honors for where you're going to go here on number 3?
Whoever takes L'Jarius Sneed's job at corner, whether that's Jalen Williams, whether that's Josh Williams or Jalen Watson, I think that's, to me, one of the most underrated parts of this team's success. And I know you're not going to get a guy who played at the level that L'Jarius Sneed played at last year, but the flexibility it will allow this defense, Steve Spagnuolo, the pressure it will take off the secondary, those guys have to come in and play well. And I just don't know. Like, they've done it in flashes. We've seen spurts from them, but I don't know. I think it's a really big thing to say, okay, now Trent McDuffie can't be at nickel as much. Maybe he's got to be outside more. I don't know how it all comes together, but I know it starts with whoever takes that job. That's the first piece of the puzzle.
Okay, so that's how you want to put it, whoever replaces Sneed?
Yeah.
You don't want to put it on a guy?
Well, I just don't. Sam probably knows better than I am. He's around the team every day, but I don't know. Is that job – is there a front runner right now for that job?
Yeah, so it's interesting because that problem arose as I was making my list, but it prompted me to put a different name than Watson or Williams, because those guys did rotate as starters last year.
Is this going to be your number 3?
Yeah, so three for me. I bet, Soren, I think you're going to go for a different name, which I think
I'm going to go for the same name.
I think you're going to go for a different name, because I'm going with McDuffie, and I think you're going to go with a different name, which almost cracked my list as well.
Okay.
But McDuffie's third for me because he is switching positions over half the snaps this year, and I think it's as much about having a lockdown guy. And look, I'm all for weak link defense and having depth. I think the Chiefs do have depth between the 2 guys you mentioned, Jeff, Shamari Connor. Najee Johnson is potentially your 4th guy, 5th guy. I think they're okay with depth. But the reason that the Chiefs created pressure, for example, last year, like we talked about them finishing 2nd in sacks, and they finished 2nd in hurry percentage or pressure percentage, for example. They should have finished top 5. You know why? Because they blitzed the 5th most in the NFL last year. And to me, the reason they were allowed to blitz so frequently is because they could play one-on-one in one spot, and not many teams could do that. So I'm looking at directly who fills the number 1 job as opposed to how they backfill the rest of it.
Yeah, I like that, and I think that's a great point. And everything you said there about Trent McDuffie is why I have a corner there as well. I'll save that. Or do you want me to do it now? It's number 4.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I'll do it now. I'll do number 4, and then I'll come back to number 3. We'll kind of snake it here. Number 4 for me is Najee Johnson, because that's the guy that they were hyping in camp last year was better than Williams and Watson. So we're talking about instrumental. How can he be instrumental? Well, for the reasons you said, Sam, I think they do lose at the cornerback position if it's just the same guys coming back. Josh Williams had a great PFF grade, but I think that's because they spotted him exactly the best ways to use him when he's out there all the time. Does he become overexposed? I think you could have gone Joshua Williams here. I think you could have gone Jalen Watson. But I'm going to go Najee Johnson just because they, for whatever reason, seem to want to tell the story that he was going to be better than those 2 guys. So that upside there that the coaching staff is selling or that the organization is selling, to me, is what gives them the best chance to replace him and to maybe do a lot of the things L'Jarius Sneed. A lot did, at least on the coverage side. I don't know that he's going to be the blitzer or the run stuffer, but if he can be the coverage guy, which Sneed is a very good coverage guy, but he's also handsy, gets flags. I mean, I don't think it's unthinkable that somebody could come in and be what L'Jarius Sneed was coverage-wise. It's everything else that made him so good there. And so Najee Johnson is a guy to me that's either I'm counting on now because of what I've been told, and I think they are counting on, and that's why they were willing to walk away from L'Jarius Sneed and not re-sign him. And so he's the guy that, to me, I think there's still an upside, and we've heard hype on. So I put Najee Johnson at number 4 on my list.
Yeah, what's interesting about this is we all identified the same problem, and it led us in different directions with McDuffie, Johnson, Watson, and Williams. And I definitely think you could make a case for Shamari Connor, because I actually think he's the guy that's going to see the biggest uptick in snaps, I think, as a result of the L'Jarius Sneed trade. Because I mean, they're going to play him in dime. Right now he's playing both safety positions. Brian Cook isn't, he's still coming back from a pretty serious ankle injury. I think Cook starts, but I think you're going to see Connor mix in there. They don't have Mike Edwards as a third safety. But also I think Connor's going to play the slot cornerback. And so I think, McDuffie replaces Sneed, and Connor is the guy that potentially backfills, Sneed's actual absence, because that's where McDuffie was playing last year. So it's interesting. We all identified that this is going to be instrumental. How do they replace L'Jarius Sneed? And we've arrived at different, reasons for who's going to be instrumental in doing that.
By the way, Northland Injury Law is Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyer, helping people with serious injuries from car accidents, work accidents, falls, other serious personal injuries, whatever they are. Northland Injury Law has your back. Their attorneys have been serving Kansas City for more than 40 years. They don't get paid unless they get money for their clients. That's right. They don't get paid unless you get paid. Northland Injury Law voted number 1 accident lawyer in Kansas City. Number 1. Accident lawyer in Kansas City. Don't wait to get compensated. Get compensated right now. If you have a case, text HURT, H-U-R-T, to 22222. Again, if you have a case right now, text HURT, H-U-R-T, to 22222, or call 816-400-HURT. That's 816-400-4878. The choice of a lawyer is an important one and should not be based solely upon advertisements. Text HURT to 22222 to get connected 24/7 to Kansas City's number 1 injury lawyer. We're talking about Northland Injury Law. All right, let's go with your number 3, Jeff, on your list. Where do you go right there?
That was quarterback.
We're just missing,
I'm sorry, number 4.
We're just missing your 3, right?
Oh, my 3. That's right. We want to go with mine. I'm sorry. Felix Anudike-Uzomah.
Oh,
right. Instrumental. Now I go here because, one, I think they missing Omenihu. I know they did fine without him, and I do think they've got good depth there. But I think you got to always be getting better in the NFL, right? Just standing pat is a problem because guys get older. And this is a guy, again, I'm going to talk about, you can't be throwing away first early picks. You can't have a bunch of guys that are going round 1, 2, and 3 and just count on like, hey, we did great. We got Trey Smith late and we got Jalen Watson late. That is all great. That all works because your first rounders work, right? Like George Karlaftis and Trent McDuffie could play. That is a lot of what made that draft so good. Yes, other guys came through later in later rounds. The Josh Williams, the Jalen Watsons, all those guys. That's a big part of it. Isaiah Pacheco. But the top guys, you can't throw away those draft picks. This guy can be instrumental because, one, he fills out the defensive line. He gives them flexibility, gives them versatility, gives them depth. He helps them get by Charles Omenihu. He gives a lot of options up and down that line for Steve Spagnuolo to work some kind of NASCAR package thing. And I think kind of like the same way I went with Suamataia, you can't be throwing these guys away. This guy can't be serving an apprenticeship for 2 years. Yeah. He's got to get on the field. He's got to play, and he's got to play well. And there's a pedigree there. He is the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year last year there. He was a first-round pick, and that was not a big reach. Do they do it for the storyline on draft day? God, I hope not, but maybe. But this isn't a guy who sucks. He needs to be good. And there's every reason to believe that there's not a problem with the coaching at that position anymore. This isn't, no offense, but Britt Reed as the defensive line coach. So this needs to work. And so I've got him at number 3 because I do think, you mentioned all the blitzing. The same thing about, I don't know that you can blitz as much when you don't have Sneed and McDuffie. It'd be a lot better if you're really getting some heat without having to blitz as much.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said except for one sentence, which is that he needs to be good. The reason he's not on my list is I don't think the Chiefs need him to be good. I just don't think he's going to be that instrumental. I don't think his production is that instrumental to how the Chiefs win. He played 7 snaps in the Super Bowl after Omenihu got hurt.
I agree, but do you agree he doesn't need to be good if they cover like they did last year? But if then they've got to get more out of that defensive line. Right? Like they've got to get more pressure. And you mentioned 5th most blitzing means that they couldn't just send their 4. PFF graded the position units of every team by division, right? They ranked them within the division. Chiefs were number 1 at every position group in the AFC West, except for D-line.
Yeah. I mean, I think, look, he's a tough one because like if Felix is really good, I do think that has a major influence on the Chiefs. I just think they can win without him being productive.
I think Soren's making the point of he's a first-round pick, and so he just start performing. I think you're making a valid point, Sam. But I also think I agree with Soren saying he's got to start playing. And my concern here is you go back to what Steve Spagnuolo was a couple of years ago before he started playing all these young guys. And does he trust this guy? They went out and spent a whole bunch of money on Mike Dana. They got George Karlaftis. Is like, where does this guy fit into the picture? Because there's no buzz about him this offseason. So you have to start thinking, this is another wasted year for a guy who was, the 32nd overall pick?
Yeah. I mean, and I did, and I listen, I for all the reasons you've stated about the coverage, I feel very good that they will replace a lot of what they had in the coverage, right? I do, but I can't guarantee it. And if they don't, they're going to need the pressure. And Omenihu's not there. I know he wasn't the guy, and that was a problem. It could have been a problem. They didn't win the Super Bowl by 3 touchdowns. They won it in overtime. So, I don't think we can just say, oh, they have no fears, no worries, right?
Yeah,
so,
I mean, they did have the number 2 ranked defense, and he didn't play more than 10 snaps after week 5 last year. And I recognize part of your rationale was Omenihu's out. And so therefore, I mean, let's look at his snaps during those first 6 weeks, because that's when Omenihu was out, right? 19, 16, 25, 13, 25. So he plays more, obviously, when Omenihu's out. But
do you agree, Sam, with the principle that if you're staying the same, you're getting worse?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Right, and so we can agree. Yeah. Willie Gay is gone, so depth. I don't care. You may not love Willie Gay, but their depth at linebackers less. And L'Jarius Sneed being out, they're definitely lost a great player there. So you have to get better somewhere. And there was no big investment made at a corner the caliber of L'Jarius Sneed. We can like all these guys, but they all played behind Sneed for a reason.
They didn't sign anybody on defense.
Right.
Nobody.
And they didn't sign any at linebacker. So, to me, for the defense to maintain where it is, somebody in-house has to get a lot better. That is a guy that can do it based upon his pedigree. That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah. I mean, if you remember, a couple months ago, I predicted the Chiefs would not finish in the top 10 defensively because of what you just mentioned, the depth pieces. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is a lot of the guys I put on my list, I saw both ways. If this guy's bad, they're in trouble. If he's good, they're going to – I can get there with if Felix is really good, how significantly that changes their defense. I can't quite get there with if he's not, they're in
and I'm with you. And where I come from is who is the player that has the pedigree that you say could take a big leap forward?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think that's probably your best argument for putting him on the list.
Yeah. Okay. Who do you got at number 4, Jeff?
Leo Chenal.
Okay.
Going with your linebacker comment. I think he had a great Super Bowl. I thought he was going to be a weak link for them against the 49ers because they play so much base offense, and he made a lot of plays, obviously forced a big fumble. I feel like people are underrating how much the Chiefs are going to have to be good at run defense this year. And that's where he makes his hay. And you're talking about the Chargers are going to run the ball. Denver's probably going to run the football a lot. The Raiders are going to do it. They're going to see it from the Ravens in week 1. The Browns, the Niners again. You're probably going to see 6 or 7 teams that are going to line up and really try to gash you and punch you in the mouth. And so a guy like Leo Chenal is probably going to play a lot more than we suspect and have more opportunities to have the kind of impact he had against the Niners in the Super Bowl. So I'm going with him with my 4th pick.
Okay. All right. I got no problem with that because I'll just chime in right now. That is one of my strongest considerations. I'll say my number 5 for a minute, but he was absolutely on my list of about 8, 9, 10 guys because I think not only has he got to play, but he's got to be healthy. Sam.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any problem with it. It's tough. It's tough for me to get there with any linebacker, just because I thought the Chiefs proved last year with their best linebacker being out, they didn't really skip a beat. But I think you make a great point about the fact that maybe teams are actually going to, I mean, we've been saying it for 3 years. When are teams actually going to have the discipline to run the ball more frequently against a very clear only weakness that defense had last year? 4th on my list, though, is Rashee Rice. And, if we were saying people instead of Chiefs players, you might just say Roger Goodell. But I mean, look, the Chiefs, as I mentioned earlier this podcast and other podcasts, have not thrown the ball downfield effectively for a little while now. The only reason that they were still able to move the ball last year was because they could have underneath stuff. And by the way, I think we all think that Travis Kelce is going to play fewer snaps. He's talked about the way that sitting out the last week of the season was effective for his body. And I think they're going to try and work that in more end game, not play him 80%, 85% of the snaps every game. And if Kelce's not on the field, there's one guy that I think very clearly can beat your defense underneath if you're taking off the top, and it's Rashee Rice. And in fact, I think you could make the argument, if I knew he was going to play all 17 games, that he could be 1 or 2 on your list. It's just the fact that it's the potential of him missing half the season that you can't have him 1 or 2 on your list.
Okay, so Rashee Rice is number 4 on yours.
Yeah. By the way, not a good sign that Cam Sutton, the Steelers corner, a domestic situation, just got 8 games. Not a good sign for Rashee Rice, right?
Yeah. I mean, I mean, he's not a domestic situation, but it shows that they're throwing down big penalties.
They're banging people. Yeah.
I agree. All right. So that's Leo Chenal, Rashee Rice. I've already given Najee Johnson. You want me to lead off with or no? Let's go with you, Sam. Let's stay with you. We'll finish your list off. Who do you have number 5?
I've got George Karlaftis. And mostly it's just because I think the opportunity's there for George Karlaftis. I mean, all the attention that offensive lines give to Chris Jones, he's double teamed on 3/4 of the snaps. Like, Karlaftis has the ability to win, and he just has to do it one-on-one in most situations. He also has the ability to help out the secondary, because if George Karlaftis takes a leap in year 3, then they have to potentially use a tight end to chip. They've got to potentially use a running back to chip. And by the way, those are positions that the Chiefs did not defend well last year. As good as they were defensively, they were 21st in the NFL in DVOA against defending running backs, because their linebackers don't cover that well. Well, one way you can cover the running back better is if your edge rusher is consistently bringing pressure to where you've got to use that running back on 3rd downs to help chip, then all of a sudden defending that guy becomes a hell of a lot easier because he's not going out for routes. So I think George Karlaftis has the ability to influence the production of the defense a lot.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, like, I for all the reasons I stated, Felix Anudike-Uzomah, I'm clearly down with the defensive line getting better. But I kind of feel like maybe why I didn't even look at George Karlaftis is because I said my comp to him when they drafted him was Tamba Ali, and I think that's been pretty spot on. I think he's going to be a really good defensive lineman that gives you max effort all the time. But I don't think he has the tools to like suddenly be a 20 sack guy. I think there's a 15 sack guy in a lot of people. I think a lot of times that just comes from, opportunity, flushing guys out. But I am with you. He needs to be productive, so that Chris Jones double teams actually do something. Somebody's got to beat somebody one-on-one for sure.
Yeah. I mean, even if it's not getting the sack, it's creating the pressure. It's altering the play. It's, like I said, forcing them to keep somebody else in the backfield because of the game you're having, because of the pressure you're consistently creating. Because, I mean, it changes everything in the passing game. And like I said, it's the one weakness this defense had in the passing game last year was they didn't guard running backs very well.
Yeah. Jeff, what do you got at number 5?
I'm going with a different defensive end edge rusher, and that's Mike Dana.
Okay.
And for some of the same reasons Sam just mentioned about Karlaftis, I mean, he obviously got the big contract in the offseason, or got a decent-sized contract for what he's been in the NFL. And without FAU really showing up big so far, I mean, he's got to come in and do a lot of the same things. And I like him. I was impressed with what he did, but it's a little different story once people start getting a book on you and they have a little higher expectation of what you can do. And so, I want to see him come in and do it again at a higher level, put up similar numbers, be as disruptive. I know he can move around on the defensive line, but I think there's going to be a lot asked of him because there's going to be so much attention paid to Chris Jones and Karlaftis. And so he's going to have to be the guy who gets it done on the other side.
I love this.
3
minutes.
It didn't take 3 minutes. Trust me.
Take that long. I give mad props. Terry was asking about Dana. I give mad props again. I'll state it every time his name comes up, to the scouting department and the decision to take him, because he stepped up in competition and was nowhere to be found. By the way, by a guy who's now coaching the Chargers. Now they changed over the defensive coaching staff, and I think that's part of the reason why is that Mike Dana could play, and they weren't getting a lot out of him at Michigan. But the guy's been. I just feel like we know what Mike Dana is. Like, kind of back to Sam's original point on Dana. But I do think you're right. Like, from a need standpoint, if you're going to pay a guy, he needs to play well. They paid him. So for the same reason you can't draft guys high and get nothing from them, you can't be splashing around checks just because, well, we know what he is.
Yeah, I mean, and Karlaftis and Dana also have that same question that we had about Kingsley Suamataia, which is if one of these guys goes down, what happens to the Chiefs' defensive line? Like who's next on the list with Omenihu out? Yeah. And so that's, I think, a major reason for a lot of the guys on my list, but yeah, I mean, we all have a defensive end on our list for the coverage reason, for the fact that Chris Jones is going to get doubled a lot. But that's another reason I think to have one of the starting edge rushers on your list is it's kind of thin at number 3 and 4 behind him.
All right, I'll give my last one, and that is Xavier Worthy at wide receiver. I'm going to double down at wide receiver.
2 wideouts. Okay,
I got 2 wideouts because I think this offense, they have done a great job of obviously winning 2 championships since they traded Tyreek Hill. But I think bread is buttered in the NFL by the offensive side. And I think for a number of reasons, it's important that they hit on wide receivers. One, they've missed on a number of them. I mean, Kadarius Toney is basically a 3rd and a 6th, and they missed. Sky Moore is a 2nd, and they missed. I mean, there's a constant. I'm coming back to the same theme of you can't keep putting resources into a position and still need to keep putting more resources into it. At some point, you've got to solve it. And I think Hollywood Brown, I gave almost no chance. I had this question, Jazzu J, who calls the radio show all the time. We were talking about wide receivers, and I gave no shot to Juju Smith-Schuster being back a second year. I just felt like he'd been around Hall of Fame quarterback. He'd been around Ben Roethlisberger. It's like, yeah, this is what it is, that he was here to get things going and get a payday, but he had been there and done that before. If he had a good year, he'd had a really big year in Pittsburgh already before, and so he's going to be like, yep, I'm back. Give me my money up. I'll go wherever. I think there's the chance with Hollywood Brown that he will prove that he will see this situation and go, I like playing with this guy, right? Okay, maybe it's $24 million over 3 years, or instead of 27, I'm sticking it out. But I still think it's like only 25%. I still think he's most likely to leave, which means you got to solve this problem in multiple spots. And I think Rashee Rice is a short-term answer, right? He's 2 years after this, because what's the likelihood that Rashee Rice is going to be someone you want to invest a lot of money in? Like there's no like, we're going to see the whole videotape and find out it's not Rashee Rice. We heard the whole audio tape and found out it was a very different story when everyone thought they had to get away from Tyreek Hill. They didn't. Rashee Rice is a player of risk, and that's been proven time and time again in his football career. So I think that they've got to solve wide receiver now and in the future. So Xavier Worthy's a first-round pick. He's got to work, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be this year. And we're talking about instrumental for 2024. Pure raw speed, take the top off the defense. He can do wondrous things. And Hollywood Brown, with all his speed, has not been a 14, 15, 16-yard-a-game guy. So he may end up being a guy who works the underneath, even though he's quick. And so Xavier Worthy gives him a chance to work it deep. If this offense is going to become truly exceptional again, because I don't think any running back's catching the ball out of the backfield. We're not going to see that, flavor of things unless there's an epiphany with Isaiah Pacheco. So I think a lot is riding on this wide receiver course. So that's why Xavier Worthy was on 5th. Who else did we consider that didn't make the list? Jeff, you got anyone else that was a close call on your list that you were thinking about?
Oh, Pacheco was certainly, a guy who was on that list just because.
Tina was mentioning Pacheco.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of what they have behind him with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think who else? Drew Tranquil, I talked a lot about. He's going to have a much bigger role, or the expectations for him will be higher. But I think he's going to play up to it. Guys I didn't put on the list were guys who I think are going to either play well or are not going to be as impactful, or not need to be as impactful. So, yeah, those 2 guys stood out for me.
I had Jared Wiley, the tight end, on my list because I think, one, look into the future. You need to get more productivity at him. But I also think the 2 tight end sets, they love to run tight ends. But nobody's ever been really a threat. Noah Gray's been fine. Not great, and I don't see any upside there. I liked the little bit of practices that I watched. I like what I saw out of Wiley. I think he can be an end zone threat. I think he can be that big guy in the end zone that they like to go to and be a real tight end. I think he's a catch first, but I think he can at least be a push and pester blocker. He was on my list. Josh Williams was on my list because I think he is going to be the guy that starts. He's going to be the 3rd corner in that mix. So I considered him strongly. And I considered Leo Chenal as well. You had him on your list. I think that's a big one because they're going to play different with him. He's different than Willie Gay. And I think, can they figure out, he's north and south where Willie Gay was east and west. And I don't mean that as a knock against Willie Gay. He was just more of a coverage and run sideline to sideline. Leo Chenal is a point of impact guy. And so they're going to have to figure out how to use him right. And if they do, I mean, he jumped off the screen when you watched the Wisconsin game. You're like, this guy's a badass. And so if they use him right, he can be really impactful. So I had all three of those guys in consideration. Sam, anybody who's close to making the list for you?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to put 3 wide receivers on the list, but you made a great argument for Xavier Worthy, and very close to why I put him on the list. But really, like I said, I mean, I prioritized the premium positions, the guys that I thought could have the most influence on the game. But a couple of the non-premium positions I considered were Pacheco, just because I cannot recall the last time, at least in the Mahomes era, when the Chiefs went in with a position with just obvious depth questions like this. Yeah. I did consider Shamari Connor as well. And then the other non-premium position guy I considered was Creed Humphrey, just because of his snap issues. I mean, Creed Humphrey is a stud blocking center. But the snaps were an issue, especially over the course of the last season. And I mean, you wonder if that becomes part of a mental battle as well at some point, because we know Creed Humphrey knows how to snap the football. That's not an issue. It's it's the consistency of it. It's the type of thing where you got to escape a game perfect, right? So I just think that potentially we saw it bite the Chiefs in the last play of regulation in the Super Bowl, and to where Rashee Rice and Patrick Mahomes are arguing on the sideline, and Mahomes has to say, "I didn't get the snap." That could have cost the Chiefs. And I just think that could pop up. I don't think it will. It could pop up to where it's that significant of a play. So if you've got a guy that potentially could have that kind of influence, and by the way, like I said, he's a stud blocker. I mean, this guy's a really, really good center, and he has an influence on the game in that manner as well. So that was the hardest cut for me.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, because it didn't cost him, but it will. Right? Like, you cannot keep having the ball on the ground. Like, nobody wants that. And it hasn't cost them big time, but it will eventually cost them big time.
Or he'll fix it and be instrumental, because he does. Because if he fixes that issue, he is arguably, especially with Jason Kelce's retirement, the best center in the game.
Yeah. No, I agree. Remember, we're proudly brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's best, nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. They've been solving parking lot problems since 1994. Get on the schedule right now. Call 816-484-3338 or find them online at GannAsphalt.com. And our friends at Northland Injury Law, Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyer. They don't get paid unless you get paid, serving Kansas City for more than 40 years. That's right, 40 years, and voted #1 accident lawyer in Kansas City, helping people with serious injuries from car accidents, work accidents, falls, other serious personal injuries. Text HURT to 22222. That's HURT to 222. Let me start that again. HURT to 22222, or call 816-400-HURT. For Jeffri Chadiha from the NFL Network and NFL.com, Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.